Chapter 7 is an interesting chapter, especially if you have interest in global markets or marketing internationally. Now, here's the good news. Everything that you'll read in this book outside of Chapter 7 is useful in Chapter 7. The rules for marketing don't change in global markets. This is the good news. What does change is the need to understand even more about the market and your marketing environment than you would ordinarily because you're in a foreign country. Foreign languages, foreign laws, foreign customs, foreign target market. So you can't just assume that you can just you can take your marketing plan from the United States and transplant it into the country of your choice. A thing called due diligence must be done. Okay. So I'm going to quickly go through this. So the global perspective, and this chapter really breaks down a lot of different elements about the level of investment or the level of control or involvement. You can go from just exporting to wholly owned manufacturing facilities in that host country, like Honda has done in the United States or Toyota. They have a very high level of business involvement in the United States because they have production here. They could just export, however, to brokers that sell their cars, and they had nothing to do with them. So within that, in that span is a viable strategy. The best thing to do is understand your market. And they're just, really it's just a collection then of various outputs and understanding the target market. But there's some fascinating things in here. I would suggest you go to the CIA Fact Book, which is a link on my USF that I provided for you. It has very interesting things about other countries, and Gert Hofstede, which gives you even more. So here's exports, kind of as to where they come from, leading exporters and importers. Who does what? You can see United States, Germany, and China distance the pack by quite a bit. Netherlands and France kind of pulling up the rear there a little bit, and then everybody else behind that. So imports, exports. So as an exporter, Germany just edges out the United States, and China, because of their involvement with the United States, quite frankly, is a net exporter as well. They export more than they import. You can see the scales on the side. Porters, this is Michael Porter, the same one that gave you the 5 forces model. This is 4 elements of international business. Good stuff. Factor conditions, demand conditions, supporting industries, infrastructure, strategy, rivalry, competitive firms. It's an idea set up, it's an analytical framework set up to help you understand the risks and the potential rewards of a step into a foreign market. And the book again gives very good examples. And what they just get into: protectionism, tariffs, quotas. These are various legal considerations that may help or hinder your operations in a foreign market. So protectionism is when we protect, and really what it is when we say protectionism, it's not protecting the United States consumer. That is the opposite. It is protecting businesses in the United States. That's what protectionism is. I don't think that's a good idea, all things said, but there are trade wars in the sense that some countries like Japan, for example, protects their rice farmers from imports of cheaper and probably better rice from the United States because they want to maintain a domestic industry, which, you can make a case for, I guess, but the one who pays is the Japanese consumer. European Union was an attempt, EU or common market used to be called, attempt to make trade within continental Europe easier. There's a map. And if you paid attention at all to the news, economic news out of Europe, you know that Greece, Cyprus, Italy, Spain, they are all teetering on the brink of economic collapse. So be aware of that as you read through this. That it's not necessarily a system that's worked better. Those countries have made some less than optimal choices. We can align, like global alliances. There's lots of ways to do business. This is one of the things that the text does really well, is laying out these different ways of extending into the marketplace, which I'm not going to talk about in detail. You have the gift of reading. Cultural analysis. This should look very familiar to you from our consumer behavior chapter. This is just applied to non-English speaking country, a foreign country. Now that could be Great Britain and Canada too, which are largely English speaking, at least Great Britain is, but there are cultural differences, and that has to be tapped into and understood. So these rules still apply, it's just to a different group of people. So translations, you can tell if somebody's a non-English speaking person and they try to write in English and it's close, but they're just not quite there. That's where you need a native-born speaker typically to translate things correctly, completely. So developing, there's developing countries, developed countries. They call it first world, second world, third world is, gives a first world would be United States, Western Europe, Japan. Second world, Brazil, China. Third world is a lot of other places that don't have the infrastructure and stability to be a first world economic power. Stability is the key. If you're afraid that the country you want to do business in may burn down your business and take all your assets, you're probably not going to want to do business there. It's not a complex thing in that sense. That's why poor countries that were poor when my granddad was a kid are poor now and probably will be poor, desperately so, into the future, because they have political instability. They're fighting wars all the time. They're a basket case and are, doomed to be so until something shakes out. Economic considerations. People may not have the money to spend. Exchange rates are critical to understand, meaning one currency, if you go to the web and Google exchange rates, they will fluctuate constantly. So you'll see what $1 buys of other currency. If you have a strong dollar, it means it's $1 is worth more against, say, the euro. So if you're a traveler and you're exchanging your dollars for euros to buy things in Europe, it's a better deal for you. And the inverse is equally true. If they're going to come over here and buy things, it's more expensive for them because it takes more of their euros to buy American goods. Kind of talked about that. Political risk rating. You can take a look at that. I do suggest you take a look at that CIA website. It's really interesting. There's a level of activity from exporting, least amount of risk, to direct investment. And I believe product alterations may be vitally necessary. Again, know your market, know your target market. It can be one of those three things. We have to completely reinvent it in order to make it usable in that country, culturally or otherwise. There you go. Be careful for dumping and gray market. I'll let you read that. Distribution is critical. Can you get it? Is it sophisticated enough? And you got to be careful with this idea of distribution. Okay, you keep reading, keep working, do your very best.